Hi, I'm Liz with the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and today I'm here to talk to you about half square triangle basics. So what does that mean? What I want to show you today is why we use 1 at a time, 2 at a time, 4 at a time, or 8 at a time half square triangles, what you can lay that into, which is tons and tons and tons of things, but also how to trim them using our favorite tools. So you may know that Jenny's favorite tool is the clearly slotted trimmer. Natalie's favorite tool is the block lock, and I like to use just a regular square ruler, but I'll also show you how to square using just our basic 5" by 15" ruler, because if you have this baby, you can do everything we make. So let me get started. Okay, so many times we use 4 at a time or 8 at a time half square triangles, and the Easy 8 method is one of our favorites, and that has, from a layer cake, created all the half square triangles you see in front of me now. But we also do 2 at a time, which is when you're going to make one line across your fabric diagonally from corner to corner, sew on both sides of that line, and cut it in half. You'll have 2 half square triangles. Why we would do 1 at a time is sometimes we have a snowballed corner, which is when we put a small square on the top corner or bottom corner, and we stitch corner to corner and then trim away the excess. Many times when we do that, there's a big enough triangle from the excess to have bonus half square triangles, and those can be collected for a future project someday. Well, today is the future. So here's how we can use all those bonus half square triangles in a future project. So the first thing you need to do with all of your half square triangles is decide what one size you're going to use and then trim them all to match. We know that trimming our triangles makes everything fit together beautifully and makes all the projects much easier and more fun to sew. So even though it's a little bit of a process, it's totally worth it. In future, you will so thank past you. So since it's the future, let's get started. There are several ways to do this. I'm going to start with the clearly perfect slotted trimmer method. So in this one, I'm going to find the stitch line on this, and I'm going to align their stitch line with my stitch line. So you can see their stitch line with the 4.5, line that up on my thread, and I'm going to trim on those 2 sides. And then I'm going to take advantage of the slotted trimmer part to cut away those 2 little bitty corners. And now when I open this up and press it, I don't have anything extra to cut off. So this presses open neatly to a 4.5" square, and I can add it to my pile. So now I'll show you the block lock. The block lock is going to have you press your block open to begin with, and then you're going to put the words for block lock on your background. You can see here I have pressed to the dark side, even though it's not that dark. I have pressed away from the background, so I'm going to lock that up on the block on the seam, and it just snugs right there to the seam. I've also pressed one to the light side, so you can see that what happens there is that now this is the seam I'm locking up against. So even though we always say it's to your background, if you have pressed to your background, it will actually be the other way around. So it's going to snug up against that seam and lock in place on the block, and you're going to slide it so that all 4 corners are on the block, and it automatically hugs your diagonal seam. So then you're just going to trim and if you have a rotating mat, this is great. If not, you can rotate this, and because it just slides and stays in place, you just make sure it's lined up on your corner. And I'm going to show you the pinked edge. You can barely see the pinked edges inside. This is going to get caught in the 1/4" seam, so I'm just not going to worry about it. A lot of times we talk about trimming down, and we can't really trim up if the block is actually too small. But if it's within this 1/4", and you can see this little block here marks that 1/4", then my 1/4" seam will cover that up and you'll never know. No big deal. So I will just trim off this little bit here and this little bit here. And now that one is a nice 4.5-inch square, and it can go in my pile. All right, 2 more to go. Okay, so next we'll do a square ruler. So you can use a square ruler of any size. I'm gonna go ahead and use the 6-inch, but you can use up to the largest size you have. And all you need to make sure it has is this 45-degree line. So we're going to line up our 45-degree line on our seam. And the first thing we're gonna do is make sure that the 4.5-inch is inside, so we're trimming away. And it is. So we're gonna cut the first 2 sides. And I like to make these really tight to the corner so I have plenty of room to cut later. Then I'm gonna spin my block around. And this time I'm gonna use the 4.5, which I can turn so you can see 4.5 and 4.5. And I will line that up. So you can see my 4.5 line is there. And I will trim off the extra here and trim off the extra here. And now this one, 4.5-inch square, goes in my pile. And the last one I'm going to show you is how to use our 5-inch by 15-inch ruler. This is our very favorite ruler, and like I said, if you have this ruler, you can do just about everything we make. So again, I'm going to use the 45-degree line, which is right here, and I'm going to count back from the 15 to get 4.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4.5 is actually going to be this between 10.5, or it's the 10.5, between 10 and 11. So I'm going to be able to turn this, line up my diagonal line on my seam, and then this is their 4.5, so I'm going to pull this down, so you can see my 45-degree line is on my seam, and you can see it just a little bit peeking out here, but the 4.5 is inside on both corners here. So trim that. Now we're going to spin it around, and now we'll use that 10.5 line and the 1/2-inch line here, and we'll line that all up. Again, our 45-degree line is going right down the diagonal, and everything's nice and square. Trim and trim. Oops. That happens sometimes. You're just gonna take that off, or you can take it off with a pair of snips. And that is how you get all of your 1/2 square triangles trimmed. So in our case, I've trimmed them all down to 4.5. Now let me show you how to lay them out into several different fun projects. So one of the first projects I'm going to show you, and we've linked to all of these fun projects in the description box below, is this one, which is called the Flickering Starlight Reversible Table Runner. So we've got all 1/2 square triangles on this side, and all 1/2 square triangles on this side. So you can make this reversible, or you can get 2 different projects, and all we have to do is lay out our 1/2 square triangles. So let's start with this side. All that we have to do is decide if we want to have all our solids together or mix and match. And we're going to lay out these to make this arrow shape, and with the next row we add 1 more to finish the arrow out. That's how simple that is. We will have additional blocks that start the next row, so that one will get repeated here to create our stripe. And if we want a different color for that, just go to a different pile, and we can start laying out that particular arrow. So you see how that can continue the file. So you see how that will continue as you create your stripes going across. And then in your center, you're going to choose 2 to be your mini arrows in a secondary pattern, and then you'll continue going the opposite direction. So it's a very simple layout, and you can play with this. You can make it scrappy or solid, and we would love to see what you make, so make sure you share with us using hashtag MSQC show and tell so we can see the fun projects that you're making. Now let me show you how to lay out the opposite side. So on this side, what you can see is we have a star inside an octagon. So let me show you how to lay out that shape, and then we make 4 to create the whole project. So I'll pick these back up. And let's use blue this time. All right, so our 4 corners are going to point in. And then our star in this case is created by the background. So in this case, it's going to be white. So I'm going to create all my little star legs on the sides. And I'm also a little bit angly challenged. So I'm going to follow the pattern instructions. Star legs. And one more pair of star legs. Nope, there we go. And then here in the center, we create a square and a square by again pointing all of our color blocks outward. So now we have this square and a square and the star legs. And we can also start playing with this with different color placement. So let's say I want my square in the center to be a different color. Just go to a different set. And let's say I want my outsides to be a 3rd color for a little more contrast. Let's go ahead and use those that we trimmed up earlier. Voila. So now out of all of your solids or your extra prints or your scrappy projects, you just need pairs or sets of 4 to create a whole new scheme. And this one can lay next to a completely different layout and still create the beautiful pattern that is part of the Flickering Starlight Reversible Table Runner. All it needs is half square triangles. As you can see, this one's going to be slightly bigger than this one. That's okay. You can decide whether you still need a border, make it nice big, or if you want to leave the border off. You can decide if you want to make 16 of these long and make some gigantic, huge project, or something that's smaller, maybe just 1 block and as a table topper. The sky's the limit. Once you know how to lay these out into projects, you can make these your very own. So we'd love to have you show us what you make using hashtag MSQC show and tell us more about it in the comments below. I have one more to show you, and that's the hunter star behind me. We get asked a lot of times what happens when I try to make a hunter star that is not all the different colors, but is 2 colors or is in solids. So let me lay out one hunter star here for you, and we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so to make this hunter star, we've used much smaller blocks in the quilt that makes the larger quilt. But let's say we're going to make 1 large hunter star, or maybe 4 total blocks. Let me show you what I mean. If I'm just going to create this block twice and this block twice, that will give me a project that is this big. So let me show you what that's going to look like when I lay this out. What we're going to do is have 2 pointing up, and then create this little diamond. We're going to do this 4 times. So I've picked 4 colors that I have this And I'm going to do the same thing all 4 times. But then I'm going to turn it. See how that works? So I will lay this out the exact same way. But I will turn it this way. And I'll lay it out the exact same way. So, angly challenged, follow the ones you've already made. Ta-da. And now I need to turn this not once, but twice. So once, and then twice. And I have made that really interesting pinwheel block. So by making the one block, turning it once, twice, and 3 times, we've created that movement and that spin. And then what happens next is we have a 4 patch. So we'll pick 2 colors. In this case, I'm going to do the lavender and this light teal. And this is my second block. All it is putting my colors in the corner in a giant 4 patch. And so if I make 2 of these and 2 of these, I've got either a nice long table runner, or if I put them in a square, I've got a great baby quilt. Or if I just do 1 of these, I've got a really fun table topper or pillow front. So you can create all kinds of smaller projects just using your half square triangles and laying them out. You just have to do 1 block sometimes, not even the whole quilt, to get something that's really impactful and fun to make. So you've seen how we've made 1, 2, 3 projects using the same set of half square triangles. It's really fun to mix, match, and play with these. So I hope that you go to your stash of extra half square triangles, trim them up, lay them out, and show us what you've made using all of the things that you've learned today in our half square triangles basics. Thanks for joining us at the Missouri Star Quilt Company. We'll see you next time.